All right, I want to thank everybody for joining in, our panelists, everybody watching from home or wherever they may be watching. This is our first of two pre-annual town meeting forums. I just want to go over just a quick introduction, introduce our panelists tonight, and I'll hand it over to everybody. We're going to be looking at essential warrant articles, and we have our moderator here and a great panelist to answer any questions and to explain how this is going to work this year. We're going to review how our town meeting will run, the safety measures we're going to take. There's another one of these forums, so if you have to, log off a half hour from now, there's another one on June 18th. Is this one being recorded? I believe it might be and posted somewhere. Libby or Erica?
It should be recorded and posted on the town website. Yep. All
right. So it's being recorded. We're going to, after we do a brief review from Libby and Denise and Sarah, we'll open it up to questions. You'll be able to type in a question in a Q&A, and you'll also be able to speak as well if you have questions, if that works easier for you. So our panelists tonight are Sarah Alger, our town moderator. We have, I believe I'm the only select board member that's here. We have our FinCom chair, Denise Cronow, and vice chair, Stephen Morey. We have our town clerk, Nancy, thank you for being here. Town manager, Libby Gibson, finance director, Brian Turbot, chair of CPC, and our town real estate specialist, Ken Bogrant's here. And let's see, we have deputy director, planner, Leslie Snell, thank you for being here. And Peter Morrison and Charlie Stott, they'll be moderating the questions at the end. And then John Giorgio, our town council, is here. So thank you all for being here. I think it's going to be very informative, not just for everybody here but, who's watching, but for us as well. We're moving really fast and trying to make this the safest we can and try to explain it to the public, answer any questions, and then get feedback from everyone. So I'm really looking forward to this. Libby, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Jason, for that introduction. So the town has gone through the warrant of 117 articles and determined which ones we believe are the most essential. And by essential, we basically mean the ones that are necessary for operating the town's government in the next fiscal year. There are some articles that don't necessarily relate directly to that, but they are important for timing reasons. So we've designated these 29 articles to be essential. 16 of them are directly related to operating the town government. Sidebar, there are a number of towns having town meetings in June for the same reason we are, so that they can get things passed to enable them to operate in fiscal 21. There are statutory allowances that will allow towns to continue operating without a town meeting before June 30th. It is a cumbersome process, and it requires the approval of the Department of Revenue for your town. It's not undoable, but it is rather time-consuming, and it's a process. So we felt about a month ago when we were talking about this, that we could put together a town meeting that's as safe as possible and get these essential articles hopefully approved as quickly as possible and keep people in enclosed spaces for as minimal time as we can. So that's 16 of these 29 articles are directly related to operating the town. 4 are real estate related, and they are time sensitive. 3 are CPC articles or special fund articles not considered controversial. 1 is an insurance reimbursement. And 3 are general law acceptances plus a bylaw amendment that relates to revolving funds, which is Article 4. And the last 2 are simply Article 1, which is the receipt of annual reports, and Article, I think it might be, I can't remember the number, 21, I believe, that is finalizing the fiscal 21 county budget, which is an article that's never been controversial. So that's an overview of how we designated these articles as essential. We are very happy to go through every one of those articles if people want to. I wasn't necessarily planning to do that. In this week's newspaper, there will be a notice in the paper that is a list. It's basically a list of revised motions, and the table of contents from the warrant with the essential articles in bold italicized text. The voters, should have probably mentioned this first. The voters are going to be getting a letter from me that explains what we are hoping to accomplish with town meeting on June 25th. They will also be getting their warrants that were, ready to be mailed out for the April, when town meeting was going to be on April 4th. So you will still be getting a warrant that says April 4th on it, and you will get a letter that explains, keep that warrant, bring it with you to town meeting. And in the paper and online right now are a list of the essential articles, plus some of them had to have revised motions because of changed budgets going into fiscal 21 because of the COVID-19 situation. So all of that's in the paper this Thursday and online right now. We have these two forums, as Jason mentions. I'm just also looking through the public outreach. The moderator is going to go through exactly how town meeting will operate. The town clerk is going to go through some of the safety protocols that she's been working hard to put into place. Denise, FinCom chair, and or Steve Morey, FinCom vice chair, will review the FinCom's process for reviewing the essential articles. And I think we want to really just open it up to questions after that. So I think next is actually Steve and or Denise, if you guys want to just briefly say how we've managed the essential article review.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you, Jason. And thank you to everyone who's participating and watching. I think this is important. We had originally in FinCom planned to do this for the normal annual town meeting, and I'm happy that we're at least getting to do it via Zoom. So simply stated, to promote voter safety during COVID-19, FinCom fully supports the Select Board's policy of limiting the articles under consideration to essential for town operations only. We reviewed and discussed all the articles together with town administration. Our motions, which will be for voter approval, are made in line with the adjusted fiscal year 2021 budget expectations. You'll hear later in this forum about passed over articles, which will be voted on during the next town meeting. FinCom is committed to doing the necessary due diligence preceding the meeting, anticipating that some of the conditions underlying the proposed articles may change between now and when they're voted. And last, I want to thank Libby, Brian, Ali, and the Select Board for their excellent work. This is not an easy time, and they've put a tremendous effort in to balance the safety of the community with fiscal responsibility to ensure ongoing town operations. With this, I'll turn it back over to Libby.
Thank you very much, Denise. Again, if any of the attendees have questions about the specific articles or the motions, we'd be very happy to take you through them. I should also mention something kind of important. The annual town election is now scheduled for next Tuesday, June 16th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. There is an encouragement to mail in your ballot. The Select Board has had discussion about the ballot questions. A number of ballot questions have companion warrant articles at town meeting that both need to be passed in order for the particular project to be passed. However, several weeks ago when we were trying to figure out how to have town meeting and how to deal with the fiscal 21 budget in light of all of the COVID issues, the board determined that it was going to be much too big of an ask to voters to continue, at this point anyway, to consider the ballot questions, many of which are dependent on overrides. So regardless of the outcome of the ballot questions, those companion articles will be moved to be postponed. And if the ballot questions pass, we can always have the articles put on a future town meeting. So that is how those are going to be handled. And now that I'm saying that right now, Brian and Sarah, I think we probably need article revised motions for those too, which I think I overlooked until this moment, that just to pass them over. Sorry, next, I would look to the moderator to just review how the town meeting will be run. including the call of the articles and how we would intend to proceed with voting. Sarah?
Thanks, Libby, and thank you to everybody else. Thanks for having this forum. So how will town meeting run? It's going to be like no town meeting you've ever been to. So I think it could be interesting. When you come in to check in, we're going to have one-way lines, maintaining appropriate social distance. We're going to fill the auditorium first. I think we've identified with the appropriate social distancing between the chairs, about 147 seats in the main auditorium. You're going to have to sit where you're asked to sit. You'll get a wristband, and then an usher will take you to a chair, and that's going to be your chair and where you sit for the meeting. We can't have people moving around or sitting together. So if you normally come and sit in a group or sit with your significant other, unfortunately for this meeting, that's not going to happen. And we're hoping to have everyone's cooperation because that will get us in and out as quickly and as safely as possible. Once everyone is in and seated, and I'm hoping that we won't have, I hate to say this because I'm always hoping for the biggest attendance possible, but I'm hoping that we will have a small attendance. I'm hoping that people will feel comfortable with the way the selectmen and the finance committee have decided to deal with the warrant, to pare everything down so that only the most essential articles are being voted. Once we're all seated in the auditorium and if necessary at the gym, then we will go through, I'll have to read into the record all of the revised motions. Those motions are currently available on the town website. I think they're going to be in the paper. Libby, you're correct on those two articles. We will need to have a motion to pass over those. Unfortunately, I'll have to read those in. So hopefully we'll do those as quickly as we can. I believe that the Novissimos will be working remotely, and we'll have those projected as well. But I would really urge everyone to take a look at the revised motions now and ask any questions that they might have. I'm hoping that these forums can provide an avenue for people to ask questions and get information that they might otherwise wait until town meeting floor to get, so that when we are at the meeting and ready to vote, everyone is as informed as possible in advance. Once I read those revised motions into the record, then I will do our normal call of the articles to develop the consent agenda. And the way it's going to work this year is, ordinarily you had to be at the meeting if you wanted to call an article. I'm not doing that for this particular meeting. If you want to call an article, you can email me. My email address went out, I think, in the letter to voters. You can call me. You can put it up as a question in one of these forums. I've already had, 5 or 6 articles called. And this is what we're going to do. So there are basically 3 buckets of articles. Of the 117 articles, there'll be the uncalled articles. Any article that is not called will be voted in accordance with its recommendation, either by the Finance Committee or by the Planning Board, as those may be changed by these revised motions that are being read in. So if you agree with the motion, there's no reason to call the article. The only reason to call an article is if you disagree with the motion that's been made. So if an article is not, all the uncalled articles will go into one bucket and we'll vote those in accordance with their recommendations. So for example, something simple like, nothing's ever simple, of course, but say Article 1, receipt of reports, which I don't think we've ever discussed, where the motion is that the reports of various departments be received and accepted. If that article isn't called, it will be voted as part of the consent agenda and will be adopted in accordance with its motion. Then we have the called articles, and those called articles fall into two categories. There are the essential articles that have been called and the non-essential articles that have been called. Now, hopefully, if we do a really good job, most of the essential articles won't be called and will be voted in accordance with their recommendation. But I anticipate that there will at least, people will want to have some discussion on a few of those 29 articles. So on the essential articles that are called, we'll debate and vote them at town meeting on the floor. Anything else that's called, any non-essential article that's called, will be the subject of a motion to pass over. And that motion to pass over, I believe it will be made by someone on the select board. It is a debatable motion. It requires a majority vote. And those articles will then be placed on the warrant for whatever the next town meeting is, whether it's a special or an annual. And the select board has committed to do that, so that if you're a sponsor of an article that had a negative recommendation, you might want to call that article to ensure that it's not adopted. You want to call that article so that it will be placed on the agenda on the warrant for the next town meeting. And that, I think those are the three votes. The vote on the uncalled articles in accordance with their recommendations, a motion to pass over the non-essential articles that are called, and then the vote and debate on the essential articles that are called. I think that really pretty much covers how the meeting will go. Then we'll, of course, adjourn the meeting. And when we adjourn, we're going to ask that we're going to have people ushered out, because we can't have everyone clogging up the exits. So there's going to be a little bit of a process getting in and getting out. And we're just hoping that everyone will come. We want you to bring your mask. We'll all be wearing masks. There'll be hand sanitizing stations. We'll have as much appropriate ventilation as we can. The microphones for speakers are going to be fixed. We're going to, as opposed to having the microphones that we used to pass around throughout the auditorium, we're going to have fixed microphones that can be sanitized in between speakers and wiped down. A lot of care is going into making sure that this is as safe and sanitary and efficient as possible. And to that end, we will also have, which is going to be interesting, for the first time, electronic voting. And the electronic voting will be critical if particularly if we have any overflow into the gym, because it will make any vote counts coming from the gym much more seamless than if we had to do hand counts or other types of counts and then amalgamate the two rooms. So everyone will be given, as you come in, you'll be given, as part of your check-in process, a small voting device. They're kind of like TV remote controls, where 1 is for yes and 2 is for no. They will be sanitized. You get them as part of your check-in. They are linked to your name as a voter, but the votes aren't tracked, if that's a concern. But we do link them to the voter, so if by mistake you stick it in your bag and go home with it, we know who to track down and get it back. We'll do, of course, at the beginning of the meeting, we'll do a couple of trial runs with some easy yes/no questions, just to make sure everyone has the hang of it. There will be a help desk as well. But Option Technologies, who's coming to do the electronic voting, have been doing this really since the beginning of electronic voting in the Commonwealth, and they really have it down. I've seen it in operation at a meeting, and I don't know if you're going to like it, but I think you'll find that it's at least efficient in terms of getting the votes counted.
Excellent, Sarah. Thank you very much. I don't know if the town clerk wants to add to any of that.
Thank you, Libby and Sarah. Sarah really covered everything that I had on my list. The only thing I was just going to reiterate, if people would kindly be patient coming in, because they are being escorted to a seat, and we do have to obviously socially distance in line, and we're going to have to exit slowly too. So if people could just have patience with the process, it's not like what any of us are used to. And a lot of care, as Sarah has said, is going into trying to plan this in the safest way possible. The check-in workers are going to be behind plexi screens. As Sarah said, everybody will be wearing masks. The handheld devices are being extra sanitized. So we're trying to take the care, and things could be a little awkward. We just don't know until we try. So if everybody could hang in there with us, I'm sure we'll have a good meeting. Thank you.
I think, Libby, I probably should also have mentioned that we're going to try to have packets of materials at each seat so that people don't have to be being handed materials or going through materials as they come in. So we'll have those materials at the seats, but you should please, if you can, you're going to get your warrant in the mail. It will have the date of our original town meeting, which was April 4th on it, but that is still the warrant for this meeting. Please keep it and bring it with you. We'll have a few available at the meeting, of course, but just for sanitary purposes, it would be better if you brought the warrant from your home.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that is our sort of like town presentation on town meeting, and we are ready for Q&A.
Good afternoon, folks. Good afternoon, folks. I'm Charlie Stott, co-president, along with Peter Morrison of the Nantucket Civic League. The Civic League is a federation of 24 neighborhood associations with about 2,000 members. We, among our primary objectives, are educating the public on island issues and encouraging participation in town government. So that's why we were pleased when we were invited by the town manager to participate in these two pre-ATM forums. We're going to take questions either from people who want to raise their hand and identify themselves as having a question to ask, or people who want to click on Q&A and type in a question. So far, we do not have any questions that have been sent in, and there are no attendees who have raised their hand to indicate that they want to pose a question. So if anybody wants to do that, they can proceed to either clicking on Q&A at the bottom of the screen or raise your hand. Very silent out there, Ms. Gibson.
There are two questions, Charlie, and one hand raised.
Okay, we have a question from Judith Wegner. Hi, I had to join late. Could you clarify which articles will be considered?
Sarah, do you want to take that one?
I can answer that. The articles that will be considered at the meeting are the essential articles that are called for discussion. So after we do the call, whatever of those 29 essential articles have been called will be discussed and voted. anyone who's interested in knowing what those 29 essential articles are can find them on the town website, and I believe they'll also be published in the paper. It's a lot of budgetary stuff.
Thank you, Sarah. The second question we have is from Bobby Planzer. Are you able to vote off island?
No.
No. Unfortunately, given our form of government, you have to be present at the meeting to vote at town meeting. If you're off island and you want to vote in the annual town election, you can request a ballot by mail and vote in an absentee fashion.
Thank you, Sarah. Maureen Phillips writes in, how do I participate if I'm uncomfortable about the health risk of attending in person?
You can participate, I suppose, by letting the moderator know if you want to call an article. You can ask questions at this forum or the next forum or at any other time to go through the town website or the town manager email. And you will be able to watch the town meeting, although that you wouldn't really be able to participate by watching, but the meeting will be broadcast live, I think. Frank from NCTV, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would be live. And you'd be able to view it as it's happening. But again, calling of the articles can be done by emailing the moderator directly. You do not have to be at town meeting for that.
All right, thank you, Libby.
It's not an ideal situation here because we are well aware that some people will not be comfortable, but we're doing our best to make social distancing set out easily with the hand sanitizing stations and keeping us not long, hopefully, in these enclosed spaces, really spacing people out. I don't know if Sarah or anybody wants to add to that.
I think the only thing I would add, Libby, is that by limiting discussion only to the essential articles, we're hopefully cutting down on the amount of articles that people who are interested but don't feel comfortable coming can discuss. They can rest assured if there's something that they're concerned about, if it isn't one of the essential 29 articles, all they have to do is call the article and it will be put over to a future town meeting.
Okay, next question. Is there a minimum number of attendees that must be present for the meeting to take action? And this comes from Mary Warrow.
No, we have no quorum for our annual town meeting. So it could be me and, 3 people. So no quorum.
Okay, further questions. You can either click Q&A or you can raise your hand at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Well, it sounds like whoops, here we have. Maureen Phillips has raised her hand to ask a verbal question. And I think you're okay to go, Maureen.
Thanks, Charlie. I was wondering will town officials be available to comment in person as they usually do at town meeting?
Yes, for the most part, I would think so. I haven't heard of any members or normal staff people not coming, if that's what you mean, Maureen.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Maureen and Libby. Another question from Judith Wegner. Could you clarify what will happen to articles if related matters do not pass on the election ballot on June 16th?
Sure, and anybody can add to this too, but if they don't pass the ballot, then it won't really matter what happens at the town meeting with the articles. But Judith, might have been before you came on, the select board has already indicated that the articles that are associated with the ballot questions, regardless of whether the ballot questions pass or not, will be passed over to the next town meeting or taken up at a future town meeting and not put forward to be acted upon on June 25th.
Okay, once again, attendees can type in a question. And Judith Wagner has just sent a message thanking you, Libby, for your response. Or you can raise your hand. Here's a question from Emily Molden. Where will called articles be posted leading up to town meeting to inform citizens in advance which non-essential articles will be definitely passed over? Want me to repeat that?
No, I got it.
Okay.
I can provide an ongoing list to town administration. It can be posted on the town website if that's helpful. I can tell you that at the moment, here are the articles that have already been called. Article 38 to reestablish Parks and Recs Department. Article 48, zoning bylaw amendment, swimming pool residential. Article 55, a zoning map change on Pulpus Road and Chatham Road. Article 56, changing Rugged Road from LUG2 to R20. Article 57, changing Driscoll Way from LUG3 to LUG1. Article 73, single-use plastics. And that's it at the moment. But I will provide that list to town administration. We can get that up on the website. And I do just want to be clear that any article that isn't called will be voted in accordance with its recommendation by the Finance Committee or the Planning Board as appropriate. If there's an article that has a contradictory, and I don't think that's going to happen, but I think one of the articles had a negative recommendation from the Finance Committee, but a positive recommendation from the Planning Board. It was a zoning article. It would be the Planning Board recommendation that would be voted, but that article's been called. So if you agree with the recommendation, there's no need to call the article because it will be voted in accordance with its recommendation. If you disagree with the recommendation, you should call the article and it will be put on the warrant for a future town meeting.
Okay, Emily says, thank you. That is very helpful. Another question from Bobby Planzer. How will people see what's going on in the auditorium if they are in the gym?
I don't think they will be able to see what's going on in the auditorium, will they? Sarah or Nancy?
They won't see the people, but there will be a screen, so they'll be seeing the same screen that's being projected in the auditorium in the gym. But there will be a separate moderator for the gym. So they won't be seeing me, I don't think, but they will see what's up on the screen, and they'll have audio.
Okay, another question from Judith Wagner. If articles are called but do not pass affirmatively, does that mean that they will be debated for action and if not passed, can't be considered for 2 years? Or, as Sarah just said, does it mean that the article will just be carried over to the next town meeting? I know I'm getting technical, but these nuances are hard for people to understand.
Okay. So if an article is called and it's a non-essential article, the motion will be passed over and it will be placed on the next town meeting. I don't believe that any of the essential articles are the sorts of articles that would have a 2-year prohibition. Those are generally zoning articles, and I don't believe that any zoning articles have been deemed to be essential. If an essential article is called, it will be debated and then it will be voted. And if it's passed, then it's adopted. And if it isn't, it's defeated. And it would be up to the town whether or not to bring it back at a later meeting. But I don't believe that any of those essential articles would have a prohibition against being brought back in a very short period of time. Am I correct about that, John Giorgio?
Hello, yes, Sarah, I agree with that. A zoning article is subject to the 2-year bar if it is a negative action at town meeting, unless it is recommended by the planning board. So presumably with all the zoning articles being passed over, if they're, let's say, put on the warrant for the fall, I would say that a motion to pass over is not really a negative action. But in any event, if the planning board wants to bring those back in the fall with a positive recommendation, then they could be voted at that time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. A question from Mary Longacre. When should we expect to receive the warrant in the mail? And when is the cutoff date to call articles?
The warrants should be going out this week, and you should receive it at least 10 days prior to town meeting. And the articles can be called up until during town meeting, at the beginning of town meeting, like normal.
The morning of town meeting, when I go through the call of the article, well, not morning, sorry, I keep thinking it's going to be Saturday. It's Thursday, June 25th at 5 p.m. So we'll do the call of the articles very shortly after coming into session. And once that call of the articles is over, your ability to call an article will be at an end. But until sometime June 25th around 5:30, you should be all set to call an article.
All right, further questions from anyone attending?
Charlie, there is a question that came in on our public comment email. It is from Maureen Phillips, and I will just read it. How can physical attendance be justified at such an early date? It is the week before the 4th of July. We're likely to have more people, including residents, coming from off island with the potential for new infections. NYT survey showed that gatherings for concerts, movies, etc., were the last venue people would be comfortable to enter. What value is there to residents in town of Nantucket people which could balance the risk? The logistics seem problematic as well. Who decides who gets to attend in the auditorium or gym? Will there be separate areas for people at higher risk? What about town employees who are at higher risk? Please rethink this. We shouldn't meet physically until the fall at the earliest. Surely there is some way to approve necessary budget items without putting us at risk. Thanks for doing the forum, Maureen Phillips. So I'll start this out, and then others, maybe Jason, Sarah, whoever can jump in, Denise. First off, we discussed this quite a bit, and we consulted with other towns to see who was doing what, and there are quite a few towns having town meetings in June indoors. And we feel that the safety protocols that we're putting in place with masks, social distancing, the sanitization stations will be, we hope, sufficient to protect people and give them confidence to attend. We also wanted to get this done now because the school will not be in session. The school will be in session in the fall, and it's much less problematic for a variety of reasons to have the town meeting when there is no school in session. The areas that we're going to be in will be deep cleaned before anybody gets in there for town meeting. As far as who decides who gets to attend in the auditorium or gym, Nancy and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is a first come, first serve situation. The people will be seated in the auditorium first, the gym second. And I think as Sarah noted at the beginning, they are assigned seats. Whatever seat you get, that's the seat you stay in for the duration of the town meeting. Does anybody want to add to that question?
I guess the only thing I would add, Libby, is that there will be no, other than the ability to physically see me, there will be no distinction between voting and being in the gym and voting and being in the auditorium. It's going to be the exact same experience, the same screen, the same ability to speak, the same everything. We did look at this for a long time and agonized over whether or not to have this meeting. And in the end, concerns about what the fall may bring, a second surge in the fall, the fact that the students will be back in session in the school, also weighed it very heavily in this decision. And I know it's not ideal. It's not anything that any of us want to do, but I think we've come to the conclusion that it is the best thing for the town for us to have this meeting in June.
Peter Morrison is on my screen with his hand raised. Peter, did you have a question?
I just wanted to make a comment to reiterate what's been said before. I think on balance, when you take all the facts into consideration based on the evidence, the fact that everyone will presumably be admitted only with face covering and that there will be social distancing strictly enforced here, not by personal choice. And also, ultimately, it is the individual's choice to attend or not. I would say that the evidence strongly favors this as certainly safer than walking into the Stop and Shop, and probably about as safe as you can make things. And I would reinforce the idea that this is not something to be fearful of as long as you do as you're told and wait to be escorted to your seats and out of the meeting afterward.
Thank you, Peter. Another question from Bobby Planzer. Why can't we have town meeting on Zoom?
Unfortunately, if we had a representative form of town meeting, we could currently have a meeting on Zoom, and maybe that's the direction that Nantucket will have to go in. But at the moment, what we have is an open town meeting form of government, and unfortunately, the state of the law requires us to meet in person.
Charlie?
Yes.
I see that Maureen has her hand up, but there were a couple more questions that she had. Maybe she wants to ask them, or if not, I can make mention of it. But I'll see if she wants to.
Thanks, Libby. I first want to say I appreciate knowing more about all the deliberations that went on. Being a person who's more at risk than some, it just makes me very nervous. But I think Peter's analogy with the Stop and Shop is a good one. And also, the only thing left of my original questions was, would there be a separate area for those of us who are, deemed to be elderly, but it probably doesn't make sense to do that given what you've all said. So I think you've answered all my questions, and I really appreciate the thoughtfulness you've all shown. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Bruce Mandel comments, wasn't the warrant made available online? 19 pages, perhaps make the link available through notifications. And he adds that Zoom limits to 100 participants.
I think actually the Zoom that we're using right now, for example, is a much higher limit than 100.
500 we're set at.
Thank you. Bruce, that's a,
online.
sorry.
The warrant is available online. If people want to look at it, it is on the town website. So you don't have to wait for it to come in the mail. But I know a lot of people like to have the paper copy and hold it in their hands, and that will be on its way.
And Bruce, that is a good suggestion about having a link in our outreach. I'm sure we can do that.
Okay, further questions using Q&A or raising your hand? More questions? Seeing none, I think we may have reached the conclusion of this forum. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Any final, whoops. Bobby Planzer wants to know, what date is town meeting?
Thursday, June 25th, starting at 5 p.m. at the Nantucket High School.
All right. Any final words from the town manager?
I would just say thank you very much to the Civic League for helping to moderate this session. I know we didn't get a gigantic amount of attendance, but we got a little, and hopefully next time we'll get more. Our next forum is Thursday, June 18th, same time, 5 o'clock on Zoom as well. And please don't forget about the election, which is next Tuesday, the 16th. And hopefully people will still be able to take advantage of mailing in their ballots. And any questions, please feel free to email the town manager at nantucket-ma.gov, and we'll try to answer any questions. I don't know if does anybody else, Jason or anybody?
I just want to say thanks to everybody that worked on this. I know there's behind the scenes, you have met about this for 2 months, every week trying to figure out what's the safest way to do it. And I hope this just kind of triage of outreach really helps people feel comfortable that they don't have to go, that they can call an article, they can send an email to Sarah and understand it. So I hope, after next meeting and the letter that goes out and the other stuff that we're doing for outreach, people feel comfortable. So it's, you don't feel like you have to go. But thank you everyone for all the work you're doing.
Thank you, everyone.